with everything. So yes, my grandfather, the one who made the Vitaphone, had 7 sons, and he lived in part of New York that used to be known as Italian Harlem. It was up on 110th Street and Lexington Avenue. Was another little Italian community. We all know the one in downtown. There was one uptown as well. And they lived there in a tenement, 7 sons. And during Prohibition, the government wisely permitted families who were accustomed to drinking wine with meals, mainly immigrants, Italian immigrants, French immigrants, German immigrants, Europeans. They were allowed to make 2 barrels of wine a year. So they would buy the grapes from Napa Valley, probably from Cesare Mondavi, who was Robert Mondavi's father. And of course, the Napa Valley was struck a killer blow from Prohibition because all of their tradition of winemaking, fine winemaking, had gone back into the early 19th century. Now they couldn't sell wine except to sacramental wine for churches, which they did, but also supplying the grapes to go to the immigrants all over the country. Among them, my grandfather. And I heard all these stories because I had 7 uncles. You know, it was always fun when the uncles came over. And they would tell stories about how they used to try to take the littlest brother on a rope in a box and lower him down into the basement where the grapes were kept so they could steal the grapes because they liked the fruit. And then the old man would come and they'd drop it and he'd plunge into the grape. And it just sounded like a lot of fun. So when I ended up living in San Francisco, I had 2 boys, and I was right near the Napa Valley, and I said, yeah, let's buy a summer house in the Napa Valley with maybe an acre of grapes, and then every year we'll make wine and we'll give it to the relatives for the holidays and what have you. And so an agent did take us looking for little cottages, and then this agent, a very big moment in my life as I think back, looked at me and said, well, this isn't for you, but they're going to auction the Niebaum estate. And it's a chance to see it. It's the most beautiful part of the Napa Valley. And, you know, we had a nice house in San Francisco. I go, well, what's the Niebaum estate? Sure, we'd like to see it. And he said, well, it used to be it was the family who had founded the great winery Inglenook. But since then, corporations have bought it and broke it up, and they took the name Inglenook and they made it a supermarket wine, make a lot of money off of it. But the family kept the original estate and the home of the founder, and you can see it. So we went in, and it was like that scene where Montgomery Clift sees the beautiful rich people, where Elizabeth Taylor is, what was that, A Place in the Sun? And it was like, wow, the rich people live here, you know, and so beautiful. And they were auctioning it. So I made a bid. I didn't have the money. And as would happen in the auction, we didn't win it. And so after we didn't win it, I kept saying to my wife, gee, you know, that was beautiful. Maybe we want a bigger place than that. And so we looked at the big places and nothing. And they said, no, the Inglenook was the queen of the Napa Valley. There's nothing like that. And then very briefly, I'll wrap this up. A year later, we heard that Napa County had passed an agricultural preserve law, which meant you couldn't do anything about industrial or developmental area. And the people who had won the auction were going to put 60 homes on the mountain that was part of it. And that was now forbidden. So a year later, I went and said, well, would you sell it? And they said, yes, we would, and I bought it, and then the next week went off to make Apocalypse Now. And that's how I got in the wine business.
So it sounds like the common theme very much family.
Family and doing the things you love. I mean, you know, as a young filmmaker, I knew that I could talk a lot about this, but I knew I had to make money so I could not have to go hat in hand to people with money to beg them to let me make a movie. So I tried all kinds of investments and things to get a hunk of money so we could make our own films the way we wanted to. And I always lost. And years later, I sort of gave up. And I just started to do the things I loved, you know, like, I found a little hideaway in the jungle of Belize that reminded me of the Philippines where I had made Apocalypse Now. And I bought this little place and I got involved in I would just start doing things that I loved. And in business, what I discovered, when you do the things you love, you make money also. You don't expect to. You didn't do it for that reason, but it makes sense. The things you love, other people love too, and they sense in what you're doing something, authentic, something done for the right reasons. I remember as a kid, I once directed a film with one of my first films with Fred Astaire, and it was amazing to meet Fred Astaire, and I used to sit with him because he rehearsed a lot. He told me the dance numbers that he and Ginger Rogers did, they would rehearse for 6 months. So he said to me, once he sold his name to somebody to start the Fred Astaire dance studio, and he said that was the worst decision he ever made because he didn't like the kind of dance they taught, and he had to see his name up there. And I was only about 25. And I learned that lesson is if you are going to be attached to something like wine, you really have to do it because you're doing it, not that you're just selling to a company that's making a Francis Coppola watch and you don't even like the watch,
Yeah.
So because of that wisdom I got from Fred Astaire, I decided later on when I did find that some of these areas of passion started to be businesses, as long as our family really would be the customer of those products, I said, okay, then it's all right. But I don't ever want to make anything or do anything that I wouldn't even subscribe to. So that's been my rule, and we've been, fabulously successful in business these last 20 years, and I would never have guessed in a million years that it would have happened. But that's the reason I can give you is that everything we did, we really personally love and supervise and have control. They can say, well, if you made it this way, you'd sell 10 times more. I said, well, let's not sell 10 times more then.